Okay, here we are at our second stop, looking at early stand development and early treatments, as well as site prep. So right now we're standing in a recent plantation that was planted only 8 years ago. And before that, it was a sugar maple dominated northern hardwood stand that had experienced some heavy tent caterpillar defoliation back in 2006 and 2007. And that led to high levels of mortality and decline and growth that reduced canopy cover and actually released a bunch of beech suckers in the understory, beech saplings and suckerine, as well as led to the establishment of a thick rubus layer, blackberry and raspberry layer in the understory. So that, coupled with low levels of advanced regeneration before the defoliation event, led people to think that there wasn't much of a future for that stand. There wasn't much growth in the existing residual trees, much quality, and there wasn't much regeneration happening. So that led to a prescription to rehabilitate that stand using a fairly severe approach that involved clear cutting the stand. And the clear cutting, before the clear cutting, there was a herbicide, a mist herbicide treatment to control that beech suckering and rubus development. Because if you just clear cut it without doing that, you're just going to further release that competition and have a harder time establishing more trees. So a light herbicide, mist herbicide treatment was followed by a clear cut, and the clear cut involved additional site preparation. So the herbicide would be considered site preparation. Additionally, following the clear cut, there was a lot of unmerchantable wood and stems left over, so resulting in really high levels of slash. So the slash was treated and moved off site with a bulldozer in order to better facilitate planting operations. So the site is distributed across the Katina, and it was a nice opportunity to kind of test our hypotheses about species-site relationships and illustrate those relationships for teaching purposes. So I bet you can guess what we did. We planted Norway spruce, red pine, and European larch across the entire Katina. So you can compare the species at different points of the Katina. And of course, we expect that red pine will perform best at on convex points at the top of the Katina, on the Mongop soil series. All species will perform best. Red pine will be restricted. Performance will deteriorate strongly, except for that position. European larch will perform well on the convex points, on the Mongop, as well as on the slope positions, on the Wilden or Marden series. And Norway spruce will perform well across the board, including in the well-drained portions of the Antuja series, in the concave portions of the landscape. So we have strips of different species, of those species planted along these gradients, so we can compare growth patterns, form, survival across these different positions along our Katina or topo sequence. Okay, so that's kind of the backstory here. I'm gonna show you around. So right now we're at a place a strip of where Norway spruce was planted. And we can see that those seedlings are now saplings that are about 16 feet tall, I would say, at the most. And if we look at some of this early growth rate, you can see again that the whorls of branches are very close together here at the bottom during the first few years of growth. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm saying this is about 6 years here, at which point the trees are starting to reach above the canopy of the understory or competing ground layer vegetation, the goldenrod, the rubus. And you can see then after that point, growth rates are really starting to take off. And this last year, it looks like this tree has grown. Just deciding which is the last whorl. Looks like it's grown 2 feet. 2 feet in the last 2 years. If you look at the leader, that's this last year's growth, and then the internode preceding that. So really just looking at the distance between the whorls of branches. So little twigs sticking out don't count. You have to find a full whorl. So it looks like last year it's possible this tree grew about 2 feet. This year it grew a little bit less than that. So pretty amazing growth rates here once these trees get above this competing layer of herbaceous and shrubby species that keep it in check in the first few years. So subsequent release treatments, herbicidal release treatments can be used to avoid that checking in the first few years. But really trees will eventually grow over the vegetation and at that point are no longer affected by it. So the cases in which people do that subsequent release treatment are only where that release treatment will really make a difference for the bottom line. It's expensive. Is it going to shorten the rotation enough to justify the cost? And for some really intensive operations industrial companies, it does make sense. If they can shorten the rotation by 5 years, they'll do it. So here we are with our spruce. It seems to be doing fine. It's pretty much above most of the competing vegetation at this stage. We do see pockets of encroaching cherries, pin cherries. So you might consider some spot treatments to release any of these crop trees that are being held in check by the pin cherry. And some of this is black cherry. So depending on your objectives, you know, if you really want to, if you're managing for spruce and you want to really grow these crop trees to the best of their abilities, then that's something to consider. In a more broad rehabilitation stand, you know, we're trying to get some trees on site and also encourage native species to come back in, then we tolerate stuff like this. So there we can see some cherries overtopping some of the planted spruce. Some variability in here. Also see some red maple establishing in here. Hop hornbeam. But yeah, overall, it looks like these Norway spruce are doing pretty well. So we will head on down the trail